Hey guys, welcome to Masquerade of Motherhood, or as I like to call it, the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place where I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today's guest on our season of Help My Child Fill in the Blank is filling in the blank with my child is struggling with a disability. She not only has one, but she has two children, one with a physical disability, one with an invisible disability from emotional trauma. And she sits down with me and we talk about the struggles that they have faced. We've talked about the challenges that she has faced as a mom when she realized, I can't fix this. I can't control this, and how God has shown up in the midst of all of it. I know that you are going to be blessed by this conversation. Whether you can identify with Sarah, whether you're facing the same challenges with a child or not, I can assure you there is some hope and encouragement that you need to hear. So, without further ado, here's my guest. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, my guest is Sarah Frazer. Sarah, I am going to turn the mic over to you because I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself before we jump into our conversation.
Thanks, Courtney, for having me. I'm so thrilled to be on here. So, I am a wife of 18 years and I have five children. We have three biological and two adopted from China. Their ages range from about 15 to 8. So, we are in a very busy, I call this the middle season parenting, right? We're past the little stage. We're getting into the teenage years, but we haven't launched any yet out into this world. We're just in the messy middle of it. And I love to write and read. Oh gosh, I love to read and I love parenting and talking about motherhood. So I'm excited to be on here.
I'm excited to have you. We talked last night, my husband and I, about how exhausting most of our children are adults now. We have one just entering those teenage years. So our youngest is 12. But I've done this 5 times. So it should be
Yeah.
easy. A, it's not.
No.
And B, we were laughing last night. It was like all of our adult children last night all had a different need. And it was big stuff. I'm dealing with this, or I've got this, or whatever. I looked at my husband and I was like, we thought they were exhausting as babies, but they
Yeah.
are equally exhausting sometimes as teenagers and as adults because the issues are bigger or more costly or whatever it may be. So and I wonder sometimes why I don't sleep well. I'm like, I still have toddlers.
I think that every season of motherhood that I've had so far has been both busy and hard, but in different
Mhm.
ways.
Sure.
And so there's a different type of fatigue that you have.
Yes, I agree. In this season for the podcast, we are going to try to answer questions to moms with the question of help. My child is, and fill in the blank. And this came on the heels of several years of this podcast. And because I have 6 children and I've been very vulnerable with our personal stories, I think it's opened a door with the unmasking series that I've been doing with moms coming on and saying, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. It's opened a door for other moms to reach out and say, help. This is what's going on. And so I want to jump right into that. Are there any challenges that you have faced as a mom that you've been through? Maybe you're currently still in it, that would be an encouragement to our listeners so that they would know, oh, wow, I'm not alone. Somebody else gets this.
I think for me, I would say help. My child is struggling with a disability. And what we have faced as a family with our children is that we have one child who has more of a physical disability, that it's all physical. And then we also have a child who has what I call the invisible disability of emotional trauma and emotional disability. And it just so happens that both of those children were adopted. And I don't think that it necessarily has to do with adoption. I think that there are lots of moms out there that have children who struggle with hidden disability or physical disability. But what I have found is that sometimes it's really hard to talk about those kinds of things because we want to protect our children and we don't want people to necessarily label them or put limits on them or define our children in that way, because I don't define either of my children by that disability. That's not who they are. That's not the person that God, that's just one little facet of what they have. But sometimes it can be all consuming as a mother. That's the only thing that you get all consumed with, that thing that they're struggling with, whether that's a physical or emotional disability. And so I've definitely been in that boat where I've really struggled with a lot of things when it comes to when our children have those kind of physical or emotional disabilities.
Mhm. Do you find yourself with the child who has the physical disability, it's clearly something you can't fix.
Oh, yeah.
Do you lean toward feeling like you can fix the emotional disability more because it's not something you can see? It's not in your face saying, "I'm not capable of X, Y, or Z." Do you see a difference there?
Oh, yeah. And at first, I would have thought the physical disability was a lot harder to deal with. But really, I'm finding the emotional disability is a little bit, there have been moments where I'm like, I might not be able to fix this as well. I think that there's a little bit of trauma there that might have to be worked out with a counselor later as they get older and age appropriate, having conversations with that child. I think with my child that has the physical disability, it took me a while actually to get to the point where I realized I wasn't going to be able to fix this.
Mhm.
I think my husband's in the medical field. And so to me, I always saw that there's a diagnosis and then there's a cure, right? Like there's
Right.
diagnosis and then you have the answer. And for 2 years after we adopted our child, we still had no diagnosis. There was nothing that the medical community could say, this is what it is, and this is what's going to help it get better. The only thing that we've seen help is therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. Those um, just being able to live a normal life has been all learned in therapy. And so it took me a while to accept the fact that this wasn't going to be a quick fix and it might not ever look what the world would call normal. And so I had to learn to adapt my thinking in that way. And so when this child came with emotional trauma, it was easier for me to come to that and say, we're going to need help with this. I don't know what kind of help. I don't know in what time and what manner, but we want to have help. And right now, the one with emotional disability, there's some coping mechanisms that are starting to happen that if they continue into adulthood, I can see being problematic. But I feel like there's more I can do for that child to provide the safety and the love and the nurturing that is helping with that. I've seen progress with my child with emotional, they're making progress, whereas the physical one, it's been a slow progress.
Mhm.
So it's a different side of the same coin. I
Mhm.
think it's just a different side of the same coin.
Can you speak more specifically to the emotional disability if you're willing
Yeah.
to, like, just some
Um,
examples of
yeah, I think that child deals with a lot of anxiety, a lot of perfectionism, performance. Everything is based on performance and the outward appearance of how they look, what kind of grades they have. They don't take jokes. They can't take sarcasm. And we're a very sarcastic family. Sometimes their siblings call them too sensitive. But I think that there's a deep seated, I have to earn approval. That's my own sort of take on it. I think that there's this, I I have to measure up and I don't always measure up. And there's a lot of perfectionism that is not really, I just see it in areas like the bed has to have no wrinkles, or there would be no way they would ever write or draw with a pen because what
Mhm.
if they messed up and they wouldn't be able to erase it? There's a lot of erasing of mistake. There's a lot of not attempting new things because the fear of failure,
Yeah.
because they're the youngest, and I've had all the other four have not had these responses to the same stresses or the same kind of thoughts. Just I can see how his brain just doesn't run the same way as
Yeah.
my other 8-year-olds have. He's 8 right now, how they have run before. And we don't want to label him. We're not trying to say he has this or he has this or he has this, but we're trying to help talk him through some of these ideas that he's got in his head that are not true. He has a lot of false narratives in his head that he doesn't measure up, or he's not good enough, or he gets very upset if he thinks we're upset with him, even if the idea that I might be upset. And so that's created a little bit of lying because we don't want to make the person upset. And it's not that we are wanting to be deceitful, it's actually we're really fearful that the parent's going to be upset. And so it's just a lot of talking. We do a lot of talking. We had a conversation with him last night. My husband and I sat him down and we talked through. He was having lots of feeling. It comes out in a lot of like big feelings and a lot of frustration. And so sat him down and we said, "Do you know why you're upset?" And he didn't know. And we said, "We think it might be this." And he's, "Yes, it's because of this." And we are talking him through, you can either focus on this negative thing, this negative part of it, or this positive part of it. And we try to help him. You have a choice in how you think about things and how you can, moving forward, I said, you can either stay mad about this or you can think next time it'll be better. And then he was fine. And so that's helping him navigate, just us taking him out away from everybody else and acknowledging that he's feeling frustrated, and not really, we don't get onto him, or we don't really punish him for having these negative feelings. We're very sensitive to, you have these feelings, but let's see how we respond to those feelings. The feelings aren't the problem, it's how you're responding and how can we respond differently. And I don't know if that's normal or what, but he's very intuitive, he's very intelligent, and he has these conversations with us.
I think it's good conversations that you're starting to have with him so young, so
Mhm,
that, like what you said, it's behaviors that you're seeing could become problematic. You mentioned if we're going to lie
mhm,
because we're trying to be perfect and we're trying to not get in trouble, we're not
mhm.
lying out of trying to be deceitful. We're lying out of trying to prevent something that he's made up in his head, this false narrative of I'm not going to be good enough. I'm going to get punished or whatever it may be. And then you fast forward that 8-year-old to a 16-year-old. Now it's the same thing, but maybe the lying is on a grander scale and it's about something much more serious
Right.
so I think
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
wonderful encouragement to our listeners that it's okay to have those hard conversations even when they're young. They can
Mhm.
handle those conversations and understand that mom and dad are a safe space for these
Right.
big emotions to be
Yeah.
shared. It's okay to be upset with yourself. It's okay to be fearful or whatever, but let's get to the root of what's making you feel that way and how do we move through it. I think that by the time, if you're having these conversations at 8, then you're going to really be a safe place at 16 for him to continue to know, hey, you know what? I've been able to hash this out with mom and dad for many years. And so it's safe for me to come to them. Some of the things that you mentioned, though, Sarah, I think that if you told a mom sitting in a play group, my kiddo has a disability, and they said, "What's the disability?" They make their bed every day and they don't want it to be wrinkled and they make really good grades and they're a perfectionist. I think if you said some of those things, our society these days would say, "That's not a disability at all. Wow. Aren't you a lucky mom that your kid's doing it all right?" But
Mhm.
you're seeing in your home that it's not healthy for him to live his life feeling this way.
Not when we see that it's starting to bleed over into other people. And if
Mm.
other people aren't showing the same sort of perfectionist tendencies, he shares a room with another sibling, and that sibling doesn't share any kind of tendencies to clean up or have things in order. And that doesn't surprise me because that fits his personality, and he's, the sibling's going to be a messy person. He cares about some things, and just clutter is, he cares about cleanliness, just not clutter. And that's been a stressor point for the two of them sharing a room, that at first my husband are like, maybe they shouldn't, we should, split them up and have the other two
Mhm.
share, whatever. And I said no, because it's good for both of them to have, because in reality Like you might have a roommate or you might have a spouse that is opposite of you. So you need to be able to handle that. But I think when his ideas of like perfectionist become all consuming, I've just seen it become all consuming,
Mm.
bringing tears, lots of crying. We had an instance where he didn't study something for school and I had forgotten about it and he had forgotten about it. And it was the next day. And I said, it's not a huge grade. Like it's going to be really small. It's going to be okay if you don't have it was a Bible verse he had to memorize. I said, if you don't have the whole Bible verse, you'll get some points for what you do know. And that wasn't good enough.
Mm.
He spent hours and hours until he could say the whole thing. And I looked at him and I said, what would happen if you got, because he cried and he said, if I don't know it, I'm going to get an F. And so I said, what would happen if you got an F? He said, then I'll fail for third grade. I
Yeah.
said, if you get an F on one thing, you're not going to fail. So I think maybe I see a little bit of myself in him. I was very much a perfectionist when it came to schooling
Mm.
growing up. If it was a B, it was always like, why couldn't I get an A?
Yeah.
And I never wanted anything lower than an A.
Mm.
And I was just so filled with a lot of anxiety and stress that was probably unnecessary because I was
Mm.
putting that pressure on myself, and I see him doing that, and I want to help him not
Sure.
feel like you have to be perfect in everything. Yeah, he likes to be perfect in everything. And that I think
Mm.
that's where I say it might be a little bit of some things that he's gonna have to work through. Because it's
Right.
one thing if a child really excels at a couple things and then they flop at other things, that's normal.
Sure.
But if they're trying to excel and they're to the point where they're stressing themselves out, they can't sleep at night, he doesn't
Hmm.
like to eat sometimes, that is where I say we need to be really mindful of his emotions and feelings.
Yeah. You're seeing it spilling over. Like you said, you've got to teach him how to live in the world and in
Yes.
society because not everybody is going to do it his way
Mhm.
and appreciate it in the ways that he appreciates it. We had a situation, this is several years ago with our youngest, because he is the youngest and the five siblings. I got a call from the school and they said, "Hey, he just isn't playing well at recess." And I was, "What do you mean?" He has brothers that have played football. He was playing football and they would get out to the playground and they would go to play football. And a lot of the kids weren't playing football yet. So they just wanted to toss the ball around. They didn't know the rules. They didn't know the defense and the offense, and they didn't know the plays. And he was really struggling with the fact that other kids weren't playing by the rules. And it was very frustrating to him. And so I know that's a minor example, but it was, "Hey, bud, we have to talk about this in order for you to be able to understand and be included. And nobody's going to want to play with you if you're always beating them up about the rules that they don't understand. How about we just go throw the ball and be a kid? Let's not
Yeah,
be a football player at recess. Let's just be a 9-year-old little boy having some fun with their friends." So during this trial, have you found yourself as a mom wearing a mask to conceal what your family is facing with these children who are struggling with disabilities? And if so, what mask have you been wearing?
definitely at the beginning, I would wear the mask that I was okay.
Mhm.
I was okay. Everything was okay. And I still wear that mask a little bit with our one that has emotional disability because even me saying it out loud, the people that will listen that know me and know our family will be shocked because the way he is at home with us is not how he is in public.
Mm.
And he has the performance mask on for everyone else, but at home it comes off. And so I think that I also wear that mask to say it's okay. Everything is okay when in fact it's not.
Mhm. Man, that's an easy mask to wear. I am guilty as well of wearing that mask because I think sometimes you wear it and it makes us feel good for a little bit that it is okay. I think as believers, we know in our heart it will be okay, but sometimes it doesn't feel okay. And sometimes you don't want to tell everybody. But at the same time, one of the things that I've learned through the almost 3 years of doing this podcast is It's so freeing when you can say it's not okay, and then you realize we're really surrounded by a community of people, and none of us are truly just okay all the time, and it's nice to be able to then find people that you can trust with your story and that can identify with you so that when you really aren't okay and you don't wanna wear the mask, you have somebody to turn to. I'm gonna pivot here because you have a book that I wanna talk about, and I love the title, I didn't sign up for this. Did any of us? That's that when I read that title, I was like, yeah, that's perfect. And in that book, you draw parallels between Moses and our own journeys through unexpected twists and turns. And so I want to start with what tools or practices have helped you navigate these significant shifts in your life that you could share with our listeners?
I was thinking about the things that I learned when the unexpected happened, and what a two-part answer to that is that on one hand, some of these things God taught me before the unexpected happened. I walked through a season where I really was needing God's word on a daily basis, and I prioritized and had to really make an effort to read God's word and pray every day, even though it looked like 5 or 10 minutes or right before bed every night. I just prioritized God's word so that when that unexpected thing happened, I had that foundation of that already in my life. And there were times where I was really disappointed in my story. I was really disappointed, and I just looked around and thought, this isn't where I thought I would be.
Mhm.
And the Lord was able to bring me back to scripture, just that daily sort of practice of being in scripture. And I'm not saying that every day that I read scripture, I just magically felt better. It wasn't like that. But
Mhm.
it was almost that habit that I had gotten into over time. I could see the Lord speaking to me through his word. I could remember passages in those moments where I didn't have time to read, but I had read maybe a couple days before, and God reminded me of a passage or a story in the Bible. And I think for me, practically, I read a lot of stories. I wanted to read about the stories in the Bible, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, of God's people who were not just, faithful and good examples for us, but almost everybody in the Bible has something negative happen in their life too. Like the
Right.
Lord, they're real stories. I was listening to a pastor say this Bible is real because no one would have painted these people that were supposed to be heroes as such failures. And so it just gives me comfort to know I'm human and they struggled with the same things, and especially the life of David and the Psalms, and just knowing the ups and downs of David's life. During that really hard season, I clung to the book of Psalms. I would just read it over and over again, and
Mhm.
it just gave voice to my disappointment, my frustration, sometimes my anger, my sadness, whatever I was feeling. I felt like the Psalms really spoke to me during that time.
And can you speak to what was that unexpected that God had been preparing you to face? Do you
I've
wanna
had a
share a little bit
few.
about that?
Yeah, I have a few different things. I think the main one that I talk about in the book is adopting our daughter with a physical disability. And when we adopted her, we did not know that she had such a severe disability. It was an international adoption, and I think things get lost in translation. I think we were just glossing over some of the things that they had written in the report, and we were handed this little girl that we thought had just a minor disability. Turns out it was very major. She was very weak, and just we just weren't prepared for
Yeah.
the possibility of this happening. And it's really common in international adoptions to be told one thing and then it be totally different. And we didn't know that at the time, but that is
Mhm.
actually really common. And so it just threw me for a whole loop. I thought that just a little love and couple months of therapy and everything would be fine. And we were 2 years in before I realized this was going to be my life. I was now
Mm.
a mom of a special needs child, and she's 10 now and thriving and doing wonderfully. But there is that sort of, I'm on that path now. Like
Yeah.
I'm still on that path. Her future is unknown. I don't know if she will live independently. That is still up in the air. We
Mhm.
have no idea. She's 10 now. And that was the unexpected thing that happened for us. And then the Lord did such I say the Lord, and really God worked in my heart during that time to really relinquish control. I learned all kinds of lessons about what it was like to really trust and walk by faith. And so when my husband and I have some background in missionary work. So we spent 2.5 years in Central America as missionaries, and we moved in January of 2020. No idea what was coming. 2.5 months and the whole country shut down, and we're once again, like, thrown into this sort of, "I didn't sign up for this," kind
Sure.
of idea, but I've seen the Lord use those times in my life to prepare me for the next thing, and so
Yeah.
I'm in the mindset that there's always gonna be something that's gonna be unexpected, and I don't say that in a fatalistic kind of I just say that in a realistic, we don't know what life is gonna have,
Sure. Right.
but the truths of God and His Word and what He teaches us during these times, those things remain. Those
Right.
things are the things that don't change, and so that's super comforting for me.
Sure. And you had mentioned in the book that oftentimes God uses these interruptions in our life, these unexpected, to show more of himself. And so, as a mom, how have you've witnessed that these interruptions, because he had been preparing you for them, were easier to handle? The unexpected was easier to handle because you had been in this Bible reading, and then you could pull that back up and be like, okay, this is what you were preparing me for. How do we model that for our children, though? How do we teach that to our children so that they learn to know more about him and for them to trust them too? Because they're going to have interruptions in their lives. And as a mom of older kids, those interruptions, those unexpected with my children have been so difficult to watch them struggle. We want our children to not face any struggles, of course. And you've got the two youngest that they're young. They probably don't even realize just yet the struggles that they have because they're not in the world yet. And so how do we model that though? How do we begin to teach our children, hey, life's going to bring interruptions. Life is going to bring unexpected twists and turns like the life of Moses. How do we teach them?
I think I've seen so when we moved back from the mission field, it was very abrupt. It wasn't really our choice, and there was a lot of hurt involved. And my two older boys at the time, I think they experienced a little bit more of that hurt than I would have liked.
Mm,
And I at first was really upset that they were aware. And we tried
mhm,
to shield them, we tried to hide a lot of the things, and finally, I thought there's no need for them. They know on the surface what is going on. And so why not invite them into our own process as my husband and I have processed it? We've talked with them specifically about this is how we felt and this is how we dealt with it. We're struggling with bitterness right now, and this is what God is teaching us why we should not feel bitter and how we can get rid of bitterness. And we're really hurt with some choices that our friends made. And I know that you're hurt with some choices that your friends made and cutting you out and that sort of thing. And so just allowing them to talk to us about it, and also just I think being age appropriate, like talking to them about our
mhm,
own struggles, but not leaving it there, not saying we're really struggling and then not ever follow back up and say, how I was struggling with this. This is what God has been teaching. This is what I was thinking, and look at this situation and that, and helping them navigate. And I think first, I didn't want them to have to experience the hurt of the
mm.
interruption. I did not want that. But I have seen that it has the potential to grow them. And so my job as a parent, especially if they're a little bit older and they can verbally process and you can have more of a conversation with them, is acknowledge their feelings of disappointment. I think if we just say, you shouldn't be disappointed about this interruption, I don't think that's wrong. I think that we need to help them say, yeah, this really hurt when that person did that and that, and that really hurts our feelings. But what's some truth that we know? What's some truth that we know? You have your family, you have God, and you have his, what does his word say about this situation? And so pointing them back to the scripture, acknowledging the feelings, not trying to sweep them under the rug, I think has been really important to my husband and I. We allow them to share their feelings with us without any kind of commentary.
Mm-hmm.
They're allowed
That's
to say
good.
exactly how they feel without anything. We don't say any commentary about how they feel.
Mm.
We're allowed to say about their actions. I said some actions are appropriate and some actions are not appropriate. But I think that allowing them that safe space, like you said, with my youngest, even just saying, we're here for you to talk about this. Some children, I found that some of my children want to talk about it and some do not want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one child that is just very closed as far as talking about their feelings. And they just, it's just, he's still a mystery to me. And
Yeah.
so I'm just praying for wisdom and praying, but it's definitely, you have to be aware of their personality too and not force them. Not
Yeah.
force, we just don't force a lot of tell me how you felt about every little situation, allowing them to come when they're ready, trying to
Mm-hmm.
keep that door open. Hey, do you want to talk? Or have you been thinking about this or that? And a lot of times I'll be thinking about it and I'll ask them and they're like, no, I've not been thinking. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's knowing those good questions. It's knowing those open-ended questions. And you can get that advice from really any therapist.
Yeah.
If you've seen a Christian therapist, you can say, hey, share with me some of those open-ended
Yeah.
questions that are, hey, how did that make you feel? And then just be quiet. I'm so bad at being quiet. I like have to really practice being quiet. But like you said, amongst all of my children, I've got some that are oversharers and they will tell me every detail. And I'm grateful for that. And then I have some that I try to have a conversation with, and the silence is just deafening. It's, oh my gosh, did you hear that question? Did I
Yeah.
ask? Am I speaking? And it's because maybe they're not as willing to just spill it all out there. But I think that this constant coming back and saying, hey, this is how this made me feel, or like you said, sharing personal struggles, it opens that line of communication because at some point, they may be willing to share. And I think just us being present and being available for those emotional talks, even if it's silence, you can see some of the walls begin to fall down because you're being more vulnerable. And like you said, sometimes we're so scared to share what we're struggling with our children. And and I think that's us putting that mask of mom's okay. Mom's
Yeah.
okay. Everything's fine. Dad's okay. But it's that false realization that when they see, oh, this was supposed to hurt, it validates their hurt too. When they know, oh, this hurt somebody else. That makes sense. I'm not crazy that this hurt my feelings or whatever.
Yeah. Yes, and I think that sometimes we think that we should have to be the strong parent that holds it together. We've got to model that sort of emotional strength, and we see that emotional strength is not necessarily not having any feelings at all. It's
Hmm.
actually being able to share those feelings in a way that is productive. And so children, especially young children, I found they share their feelings in a wide range of ways. And a lot of
Yeah.
times it's unproductive the way they share
Right.
their feelings. And so I think helping children, if you have younger children, helping them navigate and say, you have words. So speak the words that you are saying. And if you don't have the words, maybe we can just talk and figure out, and it's usually those emotional outbursts that they have are deeply rooted in a disappointment or an
Hmm.
expectation. And isn't that all of us?
Sure.
We're frustrated and we had an expectation. I signed up for this, but then I got this.
Yeah.
And so that was the conversation we had with my son last night is you were expecting this and it ended up being this way. And
Yeah.
so let's try to figure out how to respond now. You
Yeah.
can feel disappointed, obviously, but lashing out or taking it out or being angry at everyone else, that's not a healthy response to that. And my husband and I, we really tried to allow them kind of space to feel the feelings, but also show them that you can't just have your feelings be the boss of you. Like I tell
Right.
my daughter that a lot because daughters have
Sure.
lots of feelings and girls
They
have lots
do.
of feelings. And she's starting entering that age where the feelings, they feel like they're overtaking you in ways that
Mhm.
you can't control. And you
Mhm.
feel so bad because you think, I didn't want to say it that way, or I didn't want to, and you're just emotions. So helping her navigate that has been a challenge for me, but
Mhm.
also helps me as well. And how am I navigating this as well?
And our younger moms who are listening, younger kids are not going to come to you and say, I'm feeling bitter. They're going to use other words. We moved not too long ago. And so our son had to start a new school and everything was different, make new friends, the building, everything was so different for him. And when I would say, how was your day? It was always, it's just weird. And I was like,
Yeah.
weird, weird how? I don't know. It's just different. So after a little bit, and we were seeing some behavior at home that let us know I'm sad,
Mm.
I'm uncomfortable. There was just some things like you said, to the outside world, others may not see it. To the inside world in your home, you're seeing because that's where they feel free to really let those emotions fly. And they're going to look different. They're not going to come to you and go, today I'm angry. So I'm going to beat up something in my room or whatever it may be. And so it took me a minute. And then finally I was like, okay, what does weird mean to him?
Mm.
And once I dial down on, oh, this is what weird means to him. This is what he's feeling based on what I'm seeing at home compared to what's chatting with the school about, hey, this is what we're seeing. Then I was able to go, oh, okay, weird means I'm anxious. This is uncomfortable. I'm nervous. I don't have friends yet. The I don't really know where I'm going when somebody tells me to go to the restroom and they were in portable buildings. And so
Oh,
he would have to go back into the main building, which is a little bit of a walk. And so that was all different and it was all unsettling. And so weird meant a lot of things in
right.
his little brain, but weird was the only word he could come up with. So to my moms who have younger kiddos, keep digging.
Yeah.
Don't just let it be, it's weird or it's stupid or
Yeah.
whatever
Yes.
easy words that think about what their vocabulary is at this age
Right.
and keep being open to what do you mean by weird? What was weird about it? What felt different? And it took a minute for me to finally get it out of him that taking that key and walking from that portable building inside was weird because he didn't
Yeah.
have to do that at any other school. The bathrooms were just right across the hall. And so it takes some time for us and it can be challenging. And so with prolonged challenges, with difficulties when our kids are hurting and things like that, do you have any advice for someone who may be like in the midst of this long, arduous season of change? Like you mentioned, you are now 2 years in with your daughter and it's not what you expected. You didn't sign up for this. You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, what do we do, Sarah, when we are in an extended, challenging season and we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel? How do we rest in God's goodness during that time?
One of the best things that a therapist told me early on with our daughter is at the beginning, I was really concerned with her catching up.
Mm.
Like I wanted her to catch up to her physical age, like the ability. She's got to learn this and this and this and this and this. But then as she gets older, the progress is it's not catching up to her age. And I remember a therapist, I was voicing that kind of frustration or just saying, and with and people with children with disabilities that they make lots of progress and there's a big plateau and then they make lots of progress and there's a plateau, so it's probably a plateau. She wasn't making a lot of progress at that moment, and the therapist looked at me, she goes, what does she need to know next? And at the time I was like, okay, she was like, what would you like, what would make your life easier if she could do, what could she do? And I said, potty train. Okay, like I was like, she needs to potty train. She goes, okay, so let's back that down. She goes, she needs to be able to pull her pants up and down. And I was like, yes, that, she goes, that's what we'll work on. Don't try to see where she needs to be. I wanted her potty trained. And the therapist was like, but what does she just need to do next? Okay. And so that kind of mindset I have adopted into all my parenting. Let's not try to say, I want my children to be here and emotionally healthy and have good friendships and make good choices. And no, what are they struggling with right now? And what's just maybe one step we can take? And so for my children, they all four of the five, I keep my special needs daughter home with me. I homeschool her. And then the other four go to school. This is their first year ever going to school for a lot of them. And we've always homeschooled. And so this was a huge change this past
Right.
fall for our family. Huge for them and for us. They had never been in school, let alone a private kind of high excelling academic school. We knew it was going to be difficult. And I know I wanted them to have friendships because that's what they lost a lot of the past few years. They've lost a lot of friendships. All of them have. And so I thought, that's what I want. That's what I want them to have, these deep friendships. But realistically, those don't just happen the first 2 weeks of school.
Sure.
And so I thought, okay, what do I want to help my child? So I would ask them, who did you sit with at lunch today? What do you think about that person? Do you think you might, do they like the same things? What do they like to do? Or where do they go to church? Or what kind of things do you talk about with that person? And then I asked that fairly often when they first started. And my daughter, who's in fifth grade, she goes, "Why do you ask me who I sit with every day for lunch?"
Right.
I just want to know who, instead of asking who are your friends, I'm
Yeah.
saying, who are you sitting with at lunch, or who did you play with at recess? And then I just listen. I listen and I'm hearing the names of some of the same kids' names. And I'm thinking, okay, let's have them over. Hey, would you like to invite this person over after school? And so we've done that. And so I think when you're in this midst of change, or you're in this midst of just, it feels really hard for your children right now. I think just saying, what do they need right now? Do they need to come home and maybe have the same routine every day when they come home from school? I've noticed they like that kind of routine. Do they need to start a sport? A couple of my boys, they wanted to join a sports team. And so we're doing that for the very first time. And just looking at them individually and realizing that all of them, if you have multiple children, they're going to all need different things. And just think, what's the next thing? What's one thing we can help you navigate? I don't know. That's just helped us in this season.
It's fantastic advice because I think we can get so caught up in the big picture. I want them to be here. I want them to be there. And I do think that's something you put such great words to it, because I think that's something we have also learned over the course of many children. And I'll be honest, I think my younger children are benefiting. I'm not a perfect mom by any measuring stick. I have made my mistakes, but I am seeing it more, I think, with my younger children, that I am more willing to be flexible and lower my expectations and the pressure of what society says my kids should be doing. I have become a lot more free with saying, no, we're going to do it this way because this
Yep.
is what fits this particular kiddo. We backed off of really other expectations and focused on how can you be successful today, that when you get home, you feel like, okay, today was a good day and
Yeah.
tomorrow's going to be a good day. And we'll just take it day by day. And I think it's okay. I think it's being open to change, though we don't like change. I think being open to change and being willing to stop focusing on the end result all the time and just focus on today's result. How was today
Yeah.
successful? How was this week successful? That's great advice. And I appreciate you sharing that. I end every show, with you sharing with me something that you are praying for and a verse, so that the audience of listeners and myself can join you in that prayer and that verse can be of encouragement. Could you share that with us?
Yes, our family, as I shared, we've had some background in missionary work, and we're just praying that the Lord open up another door for us to serve on the foreign mission field. We don't know what that looks like, and I'll give a little bit more of a background. We we really want to serve as a family. And that's always been something that was really passionate, that it wasn't just my husband going off and doing work and coming back, or it wasn't just the two of us
Mhm.
leaving and coming back. We wanted our kids to really see the need and the have a bigger picture of our world and what kind of needs are out there and how they can help serve the Lord in whatever aspect that they would have growing up. But we, because of how things ended with our last term, our kids have been very hesitant to move again. They don't want to move. We've moved several times in the past 4 years, and they've expressed a lot of discomfort and desire for that stability, which is completely normal and which is not surprising at all. And so my husband and I have decided that we're just going to be in a season of prayer.
Mhm.
And we're going to pray specifically, James chapter 1, that the Lord give wisdom. And I can't remember the verse number, but it's the ask the Lord for wisdom and he gives abundantly. And we're just praying for wisdom for our children. And I've seen him answer that prayer even in the past few months. We went and visited a mission board and we're talking to them and we were sharing our hesitation with our children being my son's 15. He has 2.5 years and he graduates. Or if we would sign up now, it'd be about 2 years before we would leave. Does he want to leave his senior year? Just all of these things that we're thinking through. And then part of me is our youngest is in 10 years, he'll be graduating 10 years from now. This is the time seems really short with my
Yeah.
children. So we talked with an older couple at this mission board and they said, your children, and we've been praying and praying, what does God want? We don't want this to be an excuse if God is wanting us to go into missions. We don't want this to be an excuse, but we really felt burdened for our children. We really felt like they need to know that they're important to us. And so they looked at us, this older couple, and this couple wants us to be on the mission field, right? They're part of this mission board. And this husband and wife looked at us and they said, your children need to know that they're more important than any mission work that you would do.
Mhm.
They need to know that they are more important than any work that you would do, for even if it's for the Lord.
Mhm.
And that was almost like an immediate confirmation that those hesitations that we were feeling were from the Lord. And
Mhm.
so we're just praying. We're in a season of prayer and waiting for what the Lord opens up. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know where I believe that God can give our children a heart for missions, and maybe they'll get to that point where they'll say, yes, we see the need, we want to go, and maybe they won't. And my husband and I are like, whatever the Lord is going to call us to do, it's going to be the benefit of everyone.
Mm.
Because if it's not, then I don't really think it's from the Lord. And our children are our priority right now, and we just want wisdom. And so
Yeah.
that's a prayer that I have, that you can be praying for our family as we navigate that. I know that's vague, it's not super specific, but
No,
it's
it's
something
not.
that's
I
on my
mean,
heart.
no, I think it's wonderful. And nestled in that is another message of encouragement that your children need to see they're the priority.
Yes.
They need to see that they come first above work, the mission field, even when it's work for the Lord. If it's just regular work, I think that speaks volumes to us. I know I can be guilty of that. Like my children need to see that they come before me scrolling social media or answering a friend or whatever it may be. The only thing my children are not going to come before is my relationship with the Lord and my relationship with their dad.
Right.
And so I do think that's an important message as well, coming from you when you are doing mission work and there's a greater purpose, such a large purpose that you're trying to accomplish, and the Lord saying, "Yeah, that's great work, but right now your mission field is right here in your home with your
Yes.
children." And that is just as important a mission field as any international trip that any of us could take to
Oh,
serve other
definitely.
people.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Sarah, it has been fantastic talking with you. I am going to link your information and your book and ways that people can get in touch with you. And I appreciate you sharing your story. And I hope that the listeners here help. My child is struggling with a disability, or my child is in a situation of unexpected challenges. I hope that this encourages the mom to know that they are not alone, that there are others that are in this with you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Courtney. This was such an encouragement to my heart as well. So thank you for having me.
Oh, wonderful. Remember to check the show notes for links to the books and all of the resources mentioned in today's episode. If you want to print, screenshot, or share this week's verse, head to the show notes where you're going to find a link to my website and a graphic for you to use. Thanks so much for listening to Masquerade of Motherhood with Courtney Doyle. We want to be sure this blesses you and other mothers. And in order to do this, first, you must subscribe. This way you won't ever miss an episode. Also, if you'll rate and review this podcast on iTunes or wherever you're listening, this will increase our reach to other mothers who need a little encouragement, a community, and a whole lot of Jesus. We're so glad you're here.